Imagine being so convinced you were on the right path that you never realized heaven itself was trying to stop you. Imagine an ordinary donkey seeing what a respected prophet could not. How could an animal recognize the presence of God's angel while the man known for hearing divine messages remained completely blind? Was this miracle simply about a donkey talking? Or was it exposing something much deeper about the human heart? Today, we're uncovering one of the Bible's most unusual and surprisingly relevant stories. A story that challenges our assumptions about spiritual vision and the dangerous confidence that can keep us from seeing what God is trying to reveal.
This is not just the story of a talking donkey. It's the story of a man who could hear God's voice, but slowly stopped listening to God's heart. We'll look beneath the surface of the famous miracle and explore the psychology of ambition, the spiritual danger of divided motives, because sometimes the greatest miracle isn't that an animal speaks. It's that God refuses to stop speaking, even when we've stopped paying attention.
Many people remember this passage because a donkey talks. But if that's all we notice, we miss the larger message. The miracle is not the centerpiece, it is the wake-up call. The real tension lies in the contrast between appearance and reality. Balaam looked spiritually gifted, yet in this moment he lacked spiritual perception. Our story begins far from Israel. There lived a man named Balaam, a prophet whose reputation had spread across nations. Kings believed his blessings carried weight and his curses brought disaster. When fear spread through the kingdom of Moab because the Israelites were approaching, King Balak became desperate. He believed military strength wasn't enough. So he sent respected officials with generous rewards to persuade Balaam to pronounce a curse upon Israel. It was an offer wrapped in honor, but tied to enormous wealth. Pause here. Notice how temptation rarely arrives looking dangerous. It often arrives looking like opportunity. Balak didn't threaten Balaam. He appealed to his influence, his reputation, and his potential reward. That pattern remains remarkably familiar. Many difficult choices begin not with obvious evil, but with attractive possibilities that quietly compete with our deepest convictions. The story invites us to ask a difficult question. What motivates us most when influence and personal gain are on the table? Our outward actions may appear faithful, while our inner desires are pulled in another direction. Instead of answering immediately, Balaam sought God's direction. The answer came with striking clarity. He was not to go with the delegation. He was not to curse Israel. God had already blessed them. The message couldn't have been simpler. The visitors returned home disappointed. It seemed the matter was settled, but it wasn't. Because sometimes obedience ends the conversation. And sometimes our hearts quietly reopen it. Think about this. There is an important difference between asking for God's will and hoping his answer eventually changes. The Bible portrays Balaam as someone who knew what God had already said, yet remained. Insight opens us to another offer. That subtle posture reveals something significant about human nature. When our desires remain attached to something we've already surrendered, we're more vulnerable than we realize. King Balak refused to accept defeat. This time he sent even more distinguished officials. Their offer was greater, more honor, more influence, more reward. The temptation had grown stronger. Balaam publicly insisted that no amount of wealth could persuade him to disobey God's command. Yet he invited the delegation to stay another night while he sought God's answer again. Pause here. This moment is easy to overlook. If God's instruction had already been unmistakably clear, why ask again? The text doesn't accuse Balaam with dramatic language. Instead, it lets his actions speak. Sometimes we revisit settled decisions not because we're seeking wisdom, but because we're hoping for permission. One of the most challenging forms of self-decision isn't openly rejecting God's guidance. It's repeatedly negotiating with it. The next morning, Balaam mounted his faithful donkey and set out. From the outside, everything appeared normal. A respected prophet, important officials, a simple journey down an ancient road, but the Bible quietly reveals something hidden from every traveler. God's anger was kindled because of the direction Balaam's heart was taking. Then, somewhere along that lonely road, an angel of the Lord appeared, drawn, standing directly in the path. Only one traveler noticed, not Balaam, the donkey. This is one of the Bible's most astonishing reversals. The trained prophet remains unaware. The ordinary animal immediately recognizes danger. The irony is impossible to ignore. Knowledge does not automatically produce perception. Someone may possess experience, education, or even spiritual reputation and still miss what humility might recognize.
The donkey saw the angel blocking the road. Instinctively, it turned into a field. To Balaam, the animal appeared stubborn, disobedient, uncooperative.
Hey! He sounds hard.
The journey continued. But heaven's warning had only begun.
Think about this. How often do we become frustrated by interruptions without considering that they may be protecting us from dangers we cannot yet see? Not every closed door is an obstacle. Not every delay is a punishment. Sometimes what feels like resistance may actually be mercy working quietly behind the scenes. The story ends with Balaam's eyes finally opened. But perhaps the most important question isn't whether Balaam saw the angel. It's whether we recognize the moments when God is trying to get our attention. Sometimes he speaks through scripture, sometimes through wise counsel, sometimes through unexpected, and sometimes, like Balaam, we become so focused on reaching our destination that we mistake God's protection for an obstacle. The miracle wasn't simply that a donkey spoke. The greater miracle was that God cared enough to stop a man who was walking toward danger. The invitation still echoes today, not to shame us, but to redirect us before it's too late. So the next time life doesn't go according to your plan, don't rush to assume something has gone wrong. Pause. Ask what you might not be seeing, because the delay you're fighting today may be the very mercy you'll thank God for tomorrow. One of the deepest lessons in this story is that spiritual maturity isn't measured by how much we know, but by how willing we are to let God correct our course. Balaam eventually saw the angel, but only after he stopped insisting on his own perspective. Sometimes true wisdom begins the moment we admit we don't see the whole picture. If this story made you think differently about the obstacles or delays you faced, I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever looked back and realized that what felt like a setback was actually God's protection? Your story might encourage someone else who's walking through a difficult season. And if you enjoy exploring the deeper meaning behind biblical stories, not just what happened, but why it mattered, consider subscribing and joining us for the next journey through Scripture. Until then, keep seeking wisdom, stay humble, and never underestimate the unexpected ways God can speak.